At John Wilson's wedding venue, I stood below the stage, watching helplessly as the little girl he had raised for 10 years, Emily Taylor, wearing the wedding dress I had sewn with my own hands, walked step by step toward John. John and I had been in a relationship for 5 years. And he finally agreed to marry me. I was overjoyed preparing for the wedding, and I even made my own wedding dress. But at this moment, seeing the intimate scene of those two on stage, my heart felt as if it had been thrown into an ice cave. I questioned John, but he looked impatient. Emily is young and immature. Why do you always pick on her? Emily, with tearful eyes, retorted loudly in a sobbing voice. I am immature, but I just like you, brother. As long as you don't dislike me, I'll follow you forever, even if others call me shameless. Say I'm a bitch, a mistress, I'm willing. Her cute appearance and firm tone, even saying such absurd things, made people can't help but feel pity. John, who was about to stop me, halted his steps. He gently wiped away Emily's tears, his tone full of affection. Good girl. Your eyes are all swollen from crying. You're the one I've cherished since childhood. Who dares to say a word against you? After comforting Emily, John turned his attention to me. Sarah Brown, today is not suitable for marriage. Let's postpone the wedding. I didn't speak. Turned and walked away. John's voice was low, with a hint of anger. Sarah, know your limits. This was a sign of his anger. It's just a small matter. Making a fuss any further is pointless. He lightly tried to brush it off, even accusing me of making unreasonable trouble. Emily held his arm and said coyly, Brother, Sarah must be angry with me. John comfortingly patted her head. It's not your fault. Don't worry. I'll coax her later. Just as I understand him. John understands me too. He believes I can't bear to part with him completely. In every past argument, I was the first to bow and reconcile. He just needs to wait quietly. And I can't help but go to him actively. Probably in his heart. This time is no exception. After all, in his eyes, I am such a useless person. After leaving the hall, a car blocked my way, stopping me abruptly. The car window slowly rolled down, revealing a face with distinct features and extraordinary handsomeness. Miss Sarah, do you have a moment to talk? I recognized him. David Johnson. A figure at the pinnacle of the business world, and also the cooperative partner that John had been trying hard to please. I was furious at the moment. So naturally, I didn't have a good expression for him. I have nothing to talk to you about. Unlike John's maturity, steadiness, rationality, and restraint, David is like a free, unconstrained wind, with a carefree and unrestrained style. And in business, he is decisive and ruthless. However, faced with my rudeness, David not only didn't get angry but instead smiled and handed me a prenuptial agreement. Rather than marrying a scumbag and regretting it for life, why not change the groom before the wedding starts? He leaned in slightly, his eyes sparkling with a dizzying light. I think I'm quite suitable. Miss Sarah, why not consider me? I thought he was utterly ridiculous, but I had to admit, the terms he offered were too tempting. Seeing me hesitate, David wasn't in a hurry. He handed me a business card and told me to think it over slowly. Back at the home where John and I had lived for 3 years, my heart was full of reluctance. Everywhere here held memories of John and me. I walked into the study and began packing my things, since I decided to leave. The sooner the better. While packing, I accidentally knocked over a photo album. Opening it, I was shocked to find it was full of photos of Emily. There were solo shots, and also photos of John and Emily together. A thick photo album, recording every bit of Emily from age 5 to now. In those group photos, Emily Taylor stood by the flowers, tiptoeing to smell the fragrance. John Wilson stood beside her, reaching out to lower the branches for her. Photos have a language. Even though John never said anything or left any words, through these photos, I could still feel his intense emotions toward Emily. An indescribable pain spread through my chest. John and I had been in a relationship for 5 years. Yet we had pitifully few photos together. John said he didn't like taking pictures. So I didn't push it. But on his desk, there was always a photo of him and Emily. With trembling hands, I opened the frame, and on the back of the album, written in elegant script, was a line of poetry. The sun and moon often gaze at each other, forever entwined without parting hearts. As if I had stumbled upon some unspeakable secret. I couldn't help but feel nauseous and wretched. I've always known that Emily likes John, because of this young girl's crush. She couldn't stand me and always disrupted our dates. I always thought that Emily was young, immature, perhaps couldn't distinguish between love and dependence. Someday she would understand. As long as John loved me, it was enough. So even though John always indulged Emily, I could understand. After all, she was the little girl he raised from childhood. But now, thinking about it, what kind of feelings did John have when he indulged Emily? I covered my mouth and vomited again. It was disgusting. Truly disgusting. I sat in the darkness for a long time until John stumbled into the room. He had drunk a lot but still maintained some sobriety. The living room light turned on. John saw me sitting on the sofa and instinctively walked over. "Sarah Brown, I knew you wouldn't leave me," he said, holding my hand with absolute confidence. I pulled my hand away and stood up to leave. Still angry, John grabbed me insistently. "Don't be angry. I apologize. Emily is just a child. Immature. She was wrong today. Don't hold it against her." John rarely bowed his head. But today he surprisingly apologized proactively. Unfortunately, between us, it wasn't a relationship that could be mended with just an apology. I looked at him. "John, do you like me?" John was silent for a long time, pulled me into his arms, took out a ring from his pocket, and forcibly put it on my finger. "Don't overthink it, Sarah. I'll hold another wedding for you. Bigger than this one." Actually, I just wanted him to comfort me. If he had just reassured me a bit more, I would have softened and forgiven him. But even drunk, he wouldn't lie to me. My heart felt like a wound being torn open and salted. A sharp pain. I couldn't break free, so I let John hold me. As he whispered in my ear, "Sarah, my head hurts. I want some sobering soup." In the past, whenever he drank at social events, I would make sobering soup for him. I went to the kitchen and made him a bowl. Watching him drink it, he was satisfied with my care but didn't notice the tears streaming down my face. The next morning, John was gone. And on the dining table was a beautifully arranged breakfast with a sticky note. "Didn't want to disturb you while you were sleeping soundly. Remember to eat breakfast." I threw the note and the breakfast into the trash. Not for any other reason, but because I had just seen Emily's post on my phone. "Happiness is opening your eyes to the one you love beside you and your favorite breakfast in front of you." The picture showed John sitting across from her, spreading jam on her bread. I knew Emily did this on purpose to show me. It wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. Emily always had excuses to cling to John, whether it was an anniversary, birthday, or Valentine's Day. She could always call and get him to leave. I cried and made a scene. But John Wilson just said, "Emily is my sister. How could I not care if she has problems?" He never comforted me. Instead, he acted self-righteous, making it seem like I was being unreasonable. But what kind of sister calls her brother crying in the middle of the night over menstrual cramps? I sighed, feeling like my whole life had been a complete failure. No one has ever put me first or given me the confidence to be spoiled and willful. I took out my phone and dialed David Johnson. "I accept your offer." I went to the office and happened to run into Emily Taylor as well. She was just starting college and interning at the company. When she saw me, Emily spoke in a hostile tone. "Some people talk about breaking up, but then they come chasing after him again. How shameless." A colleague tugged at Emily's arm and whispered, "Why bother getting worked up over her? if she marries into the family. Won't you be the one suffering? Emily snorted disdainfully. My brother is just fooling around with her. There's no way he'd marry her. She looked at me with a provocative smile. If I were you, I'd just back out. You've been humiliated. Yet you shamelessly cling to my brother. I touched the ring in my pocket and held it up to her. Sorry, but your brother apologized to me last night and promised to redo our wedding ceremony. Emily's eyes widened in anger, and she lunged at me, trying to hit me. You bitch. How dare you still cling to my brother? I stepped back but didn't dodge in time. Emily crashed into me, and we both fell to the ground. A dull pain throbbed in the back of my head, and I hissed softly. Emily's knee was scraped and bleeding. Hearing Emily's cry, John rushed out from his office. He was genuinely concerned about Emily, didn't even glance at me as he carefully helped her up. Brother, it hurts so much. She actually hit me. You have to teach her a lesson, Emily said in a spoiled tone. Her tearful look especially pitiful. She clearly grew up being pampered. Honestly, I envied Emily. I've never had that kind of treatment and would never dare say such unreasonable things. It was such a blatant false accusation. Yet John acted blind, frowning at me with disapproval. Aren't you too old to be picking fights with Emily? Apologize to her right now. He didn't even ask what happened before deciding I was a violent, bad woman. Suddenly, I felt ridiculous. I stood stubbornly in place, staring at John. What if I don't apologize? John was furious. Sarah Brown, how can you be so immature? Since childhood, I've always been the sensible one. As a kid, I'd give my favorite toys to my sister and save the last chicken wing for her, knowing our family was poor. I never threw tantrums like my sister did to demand pretty clothes. Growing up, when John was torn between decisions, I'd urge him to take care of Emily, and after arguments, I'd be the first to apologize and make peace. I didn't need him to grovel for forgiveness or rack his brains to cheer me up. I'd soothe myself. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. Weariness washed over me like a tide, engulfing me. I quit, I said. John just paused briefly but quickly nodded in agreement. Fine. Rest at home for a while and focus on preparing for the wedding. He was busy taking Emily to the hospital, so of course he couldn't be bothered with my trivial little issue. I sighed and gently touched my head. Sarah, it's okay. Don't be sad. John promised to throw me a grand wedding ceremony again, but he hasn't contacted me once since we argued at the office last time, even though someone still sends me John Wilson's whereabouts daily without fail. I opened my phone, and Big Data accurately pushed Emily Taylor's video to me. Emily Taylor, wearing a bikini, had long bare legs that were dazzlingly fair. She lay on a beach chair while John Wilson was applying sunscreen for her. Whose rich young lady needs someone else to apply sunscreen for her? John replied below. Of course, mine. They walked hand in hand across Lover's Bridge, and Emily prayed devoutly to heaven. Heaven, do you know how much I love him? I want to be with him forever, never apart. John said firmly. We will, because we're siblings. So we'll always be together. How much he loved her, preferring to protect her as her brother rather than be with her. Then what am I? The cover-up for their overstepped feelings. I screenshotted all of this and saved it to slam it in John's face later, after I agreed to marry him. David Johnson repeatedly asked me out on dates, claiming it was because a marriage without emotional foundation wouldn't last. I didn't understand, but seeing the long string of digits in my bank account balance, I chose to cooperate. Photos of my dates with David made headlines, and everyone knew David had an ambiguous girlfriend. Facing reporter interviews, David frankly and ostentatiously announced our wedding to everyone. With the wedding approaching, John rushed back to the country upon hearing the news. He had always wanted to board the Johnson family's big ship, so he naturally wouldn't miss this chance to get closer. Only at this point did John finally remember me. Pick me up tomorrow. Sarah, I brought you a gift. I was curious, had my breakup message to John been too informal or not eye-catching enough? How could he still order me around so casually? Seeing the flight information he sent on my phone, I didn't even open it. I just deleted and blocked him. But I still went to the airport not to pick up John, but for David. David gave so much without ever demanding anything from me. If I didn't do something for him, my conscience wouldn't rest. When I arrived at the airport, I didn't see David, but I did see John and Emily. Seeing me, John frowned and immediately scolded. "Didn't I tell you the time? Why are you so late? Do you know how long Emily and I have been waiting for you? You must be upset that I went abroad with my brother. So you're deliberately late," Emily said, unceremoniously pushing her suitcase toward me. "Hurry up and carry my luggage." I took a step back, looking at John bewilderedly. "John, we've broken up. And I'm not here to pick you up," John sneered. "Sarah, I won't bother with these little games. Shaven, you caused enough trouble. Isn't it just because you're unhappy seeing Emily and me go abroad?" Seeing my expressionless face, John softened his tone slightly. "Emily and I went abroad for business. I wanted to take you, but you've already quit your job, probably thinking that explaining once was a huge favor." John waited for me to bow my head and obediently apologize, but I just stayed silent and turned to leave. John grabbed my wrist, impatiently saying, "Even if you're being unreasonable, there should be limits. You came all the way to the airport. Are you still throwing a tantrum? Stop it. Let's go rest. And in a few days, I'll take you to David's wedding." Emily mocked me sarcastically from the side. "You say you want to break up, but you still obediently came to pick someone up. What's the use of throwing a fit now?" I laughed out of anger at both of them. "John, why do you think I'd come pick you up after all the disgusting things you've done? We've broken up, can't you understand?" Some people nearby were drawn to our commotion, though no one approached. They all cast glances our way. John's face turned livid and suddenly darkened. "What nonsense are you spouting? Isn't it true? Who doesn't know what kind of feelings you have for your sister?" I clenched my teeth, meeting his furious gaze. "Mr. John, if you don't learn to behave yourself. I know a men's virtue training class. Do you need me to introduce it to you?" I looked up, and David Johnson took off his sunglasses and looked at me with a smile, taking advantage of John's momentary daze. I struggled free from him and walked up to David in a few steps. David took my hand and gently rubbed my wrist that had been reddened by John's grip. "Did you come here specifically to pick me up?" "I'm so happy." The anger on John's face seemed to freeze. He stared blankly at our clasped hands and then opened his eyes in disbelief. "Sarah, when did you become? You actually betrayed me." Before I could refute, David had stopped impatiently. He slightly turned sideways and looked at John with a disdainful expression. "How can this be considered betrayal? Mr. John, this is clearly turning over a new leaf." Even after we walked out of the airport, I still felt a bit uneasy. In a fit of anger, I said things that couldn't be taken back. If there was really an important cooperation between the Johnson family and the Wilson family, would my straightforward rejection bring any negative impacts to the Johnson family? Probably. Sensing my uneasiness, David gently stroked my hair. I stood still on the spot. "Don't worry." He winked at me. "Don't worry, honey. John can't represent the whole Wilson family. Moreover, it's still unclear whether he can hold on to the position of the heir." David and John were completely different. John was calm and rational. When facing me, he was always weighing the pros and cons. On the other hand, David was unrestrained and reckless, without any scruples. Having been used to weighing the pros and cons, it was the first time for me to have such a direct confrontation with someone. I still felt a bit nervous, but David's words really reassured me. "Don't be unhappy." David stretched out his palm in front of me. "Let me perform a magic trick for you." He showed me his empty palm, waved it around in a feigned manner, then pretended to blow on it. He flipped his wrist and spread his 5 fingers. A shiny necklace fell from his palm and hung in mid-air. I bought it especially for you. Do you like it? The dazzling sapphire swayed in front of my eyes. I looked up and met David's smiling face. How childish. His smile was so proud. Like a kid showing off. I pursed my lips, wanting to say he was childish. But my vision became blurry. David was in a hurry to wipe my tears. Why are you crying? Don't you like this necklace? I'll buy you another one. Please don't cry. Looking at his flustered look, my heart was deeply touched. No one had ever coaxed me so attentively before. I didn't tell my family about my relationship with David. Instinctively, I didn't want my parents to know about my current relationship status. But soon, my mom called me, "You little brat. Have you grown up so much that you can do whatever you want? You've only had a few good days and now you're causing trouble. I think you just need a good beating. Are you really trying to piss me and your dad off?" As soon as I answered the phone, a terrifying scolding came. "You've really got a big nerve to break up with Mr. John. You two were almost getting married. What are you still making a fuss about?" The non-stop accusations left me speechless. My mom had always been very satisfied with John as her prospective son-in-law. There was no other reason. He was rich. Mom, John doesn't like me. I won't be happy with him. I had a headache and tried to explain the complicated relationship between us. But before I could finish, my mom mercilessly interrupted me. "Can love be eaten? It's most important that he's rich and willing to spend money on you. Thinking about love all day long. What's the use? Your younger brother is still waiting for your dowry to get married. I'm telling you, if you still want to come back home, go find Mr. John right now and get back together. Otherwise, your dad and I won't recognize you as our daughter." My mom's tone was very harsh. She always knew my weakness and could always use it to threaten me. I could also tell her that I was dating a man who was richer than John. But why should I tell her? An indescribable feeling lingered in my heart, prompting me to muster the courage to hang up her call. Ignoring my mom's frantic state on the other end, I changed my clothes and went out. David was waiting for me downstairs. It was a good day for getting married and getting the marriage certificate. As soon as I walked downstairs, I saw John waiting for me. After not seeing him for a while, John still looked as dapper as ever. He looked at me with a confident and determined look in his eyes. "Sarah, I have something to tell you." He always seemed so self-assured. David stepped forward without hesitation and took my hand. "You can say what you want after we get our marriage certificate. If you can wait until then without being called away by another woman. Mr. Johnson, don't push it too far." John looked ugly. He gave David a cold look, clenched his hands, and then turned his gaze back to me. "Sarah, you'll regret it if you don't listen to this." I was silent for a moment and decided to have a serious talk with him. It seemed that Sarah and John really didn't have a proper goodbye. He sat across from me and handed me a photo. "Sarah, do you think David is so nice to you for no reason? You don't think a guy like him would fall in love with you at first sight, do you? He wants to marry you just because you look exactly like his dead first love." I was stunned for a moment. My hand trembled involuntarily as I opened the photo he handed me. The girl in the photo was wearing a blue and white school uniform, with a high ponytail and a bright smile. She really looked like me. Even the position of the small mole on her nose was the same. Sensing my wavering, John reached out and held my hand. "Sarah, only I really like you. Come back to me. Our engagement still counts." I couldn't bear it anymore. I grabbed the coffee on the table and splashed it on his face. "John, who do you think you are? We've broken up. Don't pester me anymore and don't contact my family again." I was really angry. You know how bad my relationship with my parents is. You know I've always been in pain because of them. I've told John many times that my relationship with my family is terrible. My parents always favored my younger siblings, and no one has ever cared about me. At that time, John hugged me and vowed, "Sarah, It'll make up for the love you lack. But he was a liar. For Emily. He made me suffer again and again. And now, in order to get me back, he even contacted my family, hoping they could persuade me to change my mind. If you were more straightforward and admitted that you like Emily, I'd admire your courage. But what you're doing now just makes me feel I was blind before. With every word I said, John's face turned paler. He stared at me intently, as if trying to find a trace that I was lying and there was still a chance to save our relationship. But my eyes were firm and clear, without the slightest waver. He subconsciously reached out to grab my hand and said seriously, "Sarah, believe it or not, I really like you. There's really nothing between me and Emily. If you don't like her, I can contact her less. I've taken care of Emily since she was a child. She's very important to me. But the one I like in my heart is you. Taking care of her has become my habit and instinct. But I never thought of breaking up with you because of her." He said it so confidently, as if he didn't understand at all why things had come to this. "Would you rather be David's stand-in than come back to me?" I frowned slightly, pulled my hand away, and sneered. "My business has nothing to do with you. Even being a stand-in is 1,000 times better than being with you." John's face turned deathly pale, and he shook his head desperately. "How could that be? You clearly liked me so much. We were so in love." He didn't finish what he was about to say next, because he had already sensed from my increasingly unpleasant expression that something was wrong. He was silent for a while, then finally stood up. "If you regret it, you can come find me anytime. David Johnson is not a good person. Being with him won't bring you happiness." I couldn't be bothered to argue with him anymore. "My affairs are none of your concern, and I don't want to see you again. I wish you and Emily Taylor happiness. May all lovers become siblings." John Wilson's expression was extremely unpleasant. He glanced at David standing outside. Through the glass, David waved the flowers he was holding, while I was talking to John. He had gone to the neighboring flower shop and bought me a bouquet. John withdrew his gaze and looked at me intently. "I'll wait for you to change your mind." I found him truly ridiculous. When I cared about him the most, he chose to defend another woman. When I decided to give up on him, he came back saying he loved me. If he really loved me, did he consider whether I would be sad before making that decision? I couldn't be bothered to say anything more to him. Whatever. Facing my coldness, John was stubborn and refused to give up. "Someday you'll understand my feelings." Walking out of the cafe, David handed me the flowers and praised me with a smile. "These flowers match your outfit perfectly." I felt a bit embarrassed as I took the flowers from him. "Didn't you just give me some a few days ago?" David opened the car door for me and invited me to get in. "The previous flowers should have withered by now. I'm giving you fresh ones." "How did you know?" It dawned on me belatedly that last time when David drove me home, he had taken a stem from the bouquet he gave me. The flowers in the vase had withered. It reminded me that it was time to see you. David was really romantic and thoughtful, even though I knew he treated me well only because I resembled his first love. I couldn't help being moved. Sitting in the car, I was unusually silent. Two voices battled in my mind. One voice said, "What's wrong with being a substitute? Anyway, you don't need another relationship now. David is generous and considerate to you. So why care if you're a substitute?" The other voice said, "But I want to be loved too." I admitted I was greedy. I chose John back then because when I was bullied by a senior in my group, John stepped in and saved me. From him, I found the sense of security I had always lacked. To maintain that security, I forgave his hurtful actions again and again. Seeing me unusually silent, David slowly pulled the car over to the side of the road. "Why are you unhappy? Did John say something to you?" I looked up and met David's concerned gaze, as if thinking of something. David looked flustered. "You don't want to go back to him, do you?" I was silent for a long time before finally speaking slowly. "John told me that I look a lot like a girl you used to like." David was stunned, then showed a reminiscent smile. So that's what it was. Seeing his reaction, my heart sank, feeling like it had been struck hard by a hammer. Aching and swelling, I held back tears and forced a smile. It's okay. I'll play the role of a substitute well. Actually, you should have told me earlier. I think I could have done better. David sighed and gently wiped away my tears. No need to play any role. Sarah Brown. If you still can't remember me, I'll really be heartbroken. Watching my tears flow uncontrollably, David Johnson could only sigh helplessly, gently pulling me into his arms to comfort me. Why are you crying? I should be the one crying. Sarah Brown. I've remembered you all these years. Yet you haven't recalled me at all. He pulled up a photo from his phone album. The same one John Wilson had shown me before. Don't you think this girl looks just like you? I hesitated, looking at him, clumsily wiping away my tears as I stared at the photo for a long time. How could there be someone who looked exactly the same in the world? You really don't remember me at all. He flipped to another photo. One of a boy around 15 or 16. Not very tall. Looking chubby, with only a round face that seemed somewhat cute. I stared at that face for a long time before suddenly recalling something. Is that you? Before high school, I lived with my grandparents and attended middle school in a small town. Back then, a mother and son moved in next door to us. I couldn't remember their names, only that it was a chubby, very introverted boy, because of his quietness and uniqueness. He stood out in that small-town middle school and endured a lot of bullying as a result. The first time I spoke to him was after school, when I had finished cleaning the classroom late and happened to hear him calling for help from a bathroom stall. I managed to pry open the stall door and rescued him. After that, we didn't become friends. He remained as quiet as ever, and I wasn't much of a talker either. But often, I would deliberately look out for him. If I didn't see him leaving school after classes, I knew he might have been locked up somewhere again. After rescuing him a few times, my grandfather suddenly passed away. My parents rushed back, handled the funeral, and then took me away. I never had contact with that boy again, and to this day, I can't recall his name, but I never imagined it could be such a coincidence that short, chubby, silent boy had now become this handsome, confident, and vibrant person. That year, my dad had an affair, and my mom had a huge fight with him. They were on the verge of divorce, so my mom took me back to our hometown. Later, my mom got seriously ill and passed away, and my dad knelt before her grave, weeping bitterly. He took me back home and kicked out the mistress who had taken her place. It's ridiculous. When they were divorcing, they said so many hurtful things, wishing they'd never see each other again. But after my mom died, it was like my dad was cursed or something suddenly. He was desperately in love. David Johnson took my hand, his tone sincere. Sarah, I don't want you to end up like my mom. After leaving John Wilson's company, I updated my resume and, thanks to my excellent qualifications, successfully joined a well-known domestic clothing company as a designer. Busy with work, my relationship with David Johnson was steadily deepening, and I hadn't thought about John Wilson in a long time. One day after work, I unexpectedly saw John Wilson again. Unlike his confident, assured self from our last meeting, he now looked somewhat haggard. He stood under a streetlight, his hair slightly disheveled, reeking of alcohol. Sarah, I've been waiting for you for a long time. I didn't speak, just stood there examining him. Don't you even want to say a word to me now? I took a deep breath. John, there's nothing left to say between us. We've already said everything that needed to be said. But I can't let you go. He stumbled toward me, grabbing my hand. I can't let you go, Sarah, without you by my side. I'm truly miserable. I want to eat the meals you cook, drink the soup you make for me, and see you every day when I come home from work. I sneered and forcefully shook off his hand. Back then, when I brought you food, you let Emily Taylor pour the soup I made for you into the trash and then blamed me for not considering Emily's tastes. Now you say you want it. Go dig through the trash. John's eyes reddened. I'm sorry, Sarah. I was wrong. Emily and I really only have a sibling-like bond. You're the only one I love. He stubbornly repeated it, as if he'd completely forgotten how he'd treated Emily Taylor before. I couldn't take it anymore and pulled out the printed photos from my bag, flinging them all at his face. Then how do you explain these? The photos scattered on the ground. All the posts Emily Taylor had deliberately sent me before. Each one documented how many times he and Emily had crossed the line. Even now you refuse to admit it. John Wilson, I really looked down on you. John turned pale. He picked up the photos one by one, and when he looked up at me, his face was already full of regret. I didn't know she sent these. If I had known, I would never have let her send them. His voice trailed off. Probably realizing something from my increasingly grim expression, John lowered his head dejectedly. I'm sorry, Sarah Brown. I was wrong. I couldn't see my own heart clearly, thinking Emily Taylor was the most important to me. But after you left, I realized you're the one I care about most. I promise I'll never have any contact with Emily again. If you don't like her, I'll send her abroad and make sure she never comes back. I don't care anymore. John, whatever you do, I don't care. How is that possible? You clearly liked me so much. Who says loving someone means you have to keep loving them forever? You hurt me. So I'm leaving. Seeing his devastated look, I coldly delivered my final words. David Johnson and I are getting married soon. Don't bother me again. John never came back to me. Partly because my words were too harsh, and partly because after David learned he was trying to win me back, he caused some trouble for John. John's father didn't have just one son, with many wolves and little meat. More than one person was eyeing the Wilson family heir position. John was busy fighting internal battles over the inheritance and had no mood to act out the reformed playboy routine in front of me. As for Emily, she often sent texts to insult me. I screenshotted those messages and sent them to John, telling him to control his sweetheart. John had been so indulgent with Emily before, but now he was ruthless enough to send her abroad and cut off her financial support. I heard Emily wasn't doing well overseas. Without John's backing, she was destitute and had to work at a convenience store to support herself. She was originally an orphan, just lucky enough to catch John's eye and be adopted into the Wilson family. Rising from poverty to wealth, now that the branch supporting her was cut, she inevitably fell back to reality. As for my parents, I finally mustered the courage to cut ties with them. As a child, I always hoped for their love, but I waited so long and it never came. The parental affection I was destined to lack. I don't need it now. David and I held our wedding as planned. This time, David hired a famous French fashion designer to create my wedding dress personally. And the venue, decorations, everything was arranged according to my preferences. Looking back at my wedding with John, it felt like a lifetime ago. The pain and sadness I went through for him now seemed blurred, as if seen through frosted glass. But here and now, surrounded by everyone's blessings, David held my hand tightly and vowed to be with me for life.